Hey, this is Adam Torres, and I'm here to tell you that it has never been easier to start your very own podcast. At Mission Matters, our goal is to amplify stories that matter. That means we want to help you start your podcast because your story matters. We can do this in 3 different ways. 1, join our podcast school and take a free or paid course. 2, visit our resources page where we've already figured out what you need, such as where to host your podcast. Or 3, heck, we can even do everything for you through our podcast agency, including editing for cheaper than you can do in-house. Oh, and no contract, service is month to month. Get started by heading over to missionmatters.com and click on Start a Podcast. All right, now let's get into the show.
Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of the Mission Matters Money Podcast, your source for all things money. My name is Adam Torres. You can follow me on Instagram at AskAdamTorres. Keep up with my book releases, book tour schedule, signings, all that other good stuff. And as always, if you'd like to apply to become a co-author of one of my upcoming books, just head on over to the website, missionmatters.com, and click on Become an Author to apply. All right, today I have Christian Allen on the line. He's founder and CEO over at Money Insights. Christian, welcome to the show.
Adam, thanks for having me. It's great to be with you. I've been listening to your stuff, and man, it's just great. So a pleasure to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Well, too kind there, and I am excited to get into today's topic. As you're aware, this is a money show. A lot of people listen to this so they get tips and insights and figure out, how to improve their money situation. So today we're going to talk about moving from high income to high net worth. Not the same thing. Excited for you to go into those distinctions and what it takes. But before we do that, just for a little bit of context, let's go a little bit further into what you're doing over at Money Insights. Tell us a little bit more about your company, please.
Yes, I would be happy to. So Money Insights is a strategic wealth building firm that's focused in the alternative space. And so what's interesting is recently as I've been listening to all of these things, it's really what correlates to a lot of your shows. Our focus is in the alternative space and focused on actually helping people move from high income to high net worth. So the majority of our clients would be classified as high income. And part of that's because a lot of what we do is with accredited investors. But anyway, the focus of our firm is to help people move from high income to high net worth.
So I don't want to assume that everybody listening understands what maybe the alternative space is. Can you give us some examples of what that means?
Yes, I would love to. So, and maybe what I can do is distinguish between what I consider the traditional space and the alternative space. So the traditional world would be the things that you're used to hearing about from, the pundits at Wall Street, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, those kind of paper assets primarily. And the alternative space goes into probably the most common one would be real estate. It would consist of businesses, notes, precious metals, all those types of things that are generally cash flow type investments would be considered what we would call alternative investments or in the alternative space.
Awesome. And I think that's a great transition. So let's just dive into today's topic. So moving from high income to high net worth, where do you want to start this topic? Because it's not the same thing. There's a lot of people out there with high incomes that don't necessarily have high net worth.
That's a great place to start. In fact, I'm going to throw a quick stat at you. I work primarily with physicians. In fact, we wrote a book called Money Insights for Physicians. Now, that doesn't mean that what we do is exclusively for them, but that's just a group that has high incomes in general. But what's interesting is less than 50% of all physicians actually have a high net worth. And when you think about the average income of it's pretty remarkable, and that net worth would be considered over $1 million. So I'm not even talking like a very high net worth. I'm just talking about over that $1 million mark. It's amazing to think how many people are earning really great income, but just have a hard time making that translate into something that really lasts and can become generational. So that's what we help people do.
Where do you find, and I know this is going to change, by the way, so this is not meant to be a loaded question, and there's only so much we could do in a 15-minute podcast episode. And for everybody listening, obviously it's important for you to talk about your specific situation with an advisor so they can get to know you better. But I do know that over time, with the amount of people you've worked with, that certain themes tend to arise, and you see these things happen over and over and over again. What are some of those common errors that you find people kind of making that keep them from reaching that high net worth status?
Man, what a great question, Adam. So the narrative that we tell people, and this is based on my experience because I started in the financial planning business, I guess it's been 16 years ago, and was in the traditional space doing stock funds, mutual funds, and things like that. And what I can tell you from my experience is the most common thing that people are doing wrong is just doing all of the things that traditional planning tells you to do. That means, putting all of your money into tax qualified vehicles. It means, not considering the tax implications of what things happen down the road. And it's kind of just the crowd mentality. Well, what we find is that there's a massive difference between the activity that people are doing and what they expect to have happen versus what's actually happening. So I genuinely believe, not just based on my own experience, but based on a lot of research, and I could throw out a bunch of other stats too, but I think retirement planning as it's traditionally put out there is just completely broken. And so for us, it's a matter of changing the way that people think about money and starting to look at things that have potentially better return versus the risk that they're taking. And that's what happens oftentimes in that alternative space. We tend to think, I don't know it as well. If it's real estate, that must be more aggressive or more risky. And what's really interesting is that oftentimes the risk-adjusted return in the alternative space is significantly better than what you can find even in those traditional things like mutual funds.
Yeah, what I always like to tell people is when they start thinking about investments and retirement, is just to think about it this way: it's a product. I think there's a product that was created to market to you, of course, like any other product. It could be your household product, it could be anything really. I think at some point, we were, I don't want to use, maybe brainwash is the right word, maybe it's not, but at some point the public, was marketed to enough to where they thought that these ways were the only ways that they could achieve just some of the traditional things like 401k, to where they think that that's the only way they can maybe save for retirement or do other things, because that's what's always, that's what they were kind of raised in, that's what they've seen, that's what they're told. But they have options as a thing. It's a product. That's one segment of what you can invest in. For some people it makes sense. For other people it may not make as much sense. I mean, there's just options though. But if you think about it as a product, then you start to look back and just say, okay, so these people made this product. It's like alternatives, alternative space. That's your product.
Absolutely.
That's your product. That's what you offer. So it can be a great thing for many people. But if people start thinking about it like that, and they know they have options, then it's time to go shopping. It's time to start educating yourself.
Absolutely. I think you nailed it. That's really well said, because at the end of the day, what we're looking for is the result, right? So I think for many people and most people, it is a combination of utilizing both the traditional and alternative things. So for example, if I'm let's just say I'm a physician out there and I've got access to a defined benefit plan that, putting a significant match, or obviously I want to take advantage of that. That would be silly not to take advantage of money that just makes sense, right? Now that said, usually what we'll do is we'll say, okay, once we go above and beyond those things in the traditional space that really make sense, then we can start looking around and, like you said, becoming more educated and trying to understand what are those things that will really help me create the leverage and velocity and cash flow I need to move to that next level. And that's what most people are missing. Generally speaking, by maxing out an IRA and 401k alone, that's not likely to get you to that high net worth category, right? What will, and what we find is just that by putting your money into those types of assets that can really work for you, especially in the alternative space, in conjunction with those already make sense moves that we make in the traditional world, by doing those things together, we can really kind of take things to the next level. And so one of the things that we do is we teach people strategic ways to actually do that. Just as a quick example, one of the strategies that we talk a lot about we call it the investment optimizer. And the whole idea is to make money more effective. And so what we do is, instead of just saving money up in a bank, we'll find ways to save money up that it can be earning interest, creating value, and then we can use it in two places at once, as an example. So there's a lot of these things, though. Like I said, in the real estate world, it's just a lot easier to find those 8-10% returns than you would think.
No, that's awesome. I think it's
and
well
more,
said.
right, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, well, it just depends. And no, I think it's well said. It depends on the market, depends on what cycle we're in, especially if you're doing real estate. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to make money, a lot of different things. But I think one of the main things we hit on definitely is education's a big deal. People need to learn more about it. They need to learn that they have options. And as they do, then they'll see, you know, companies like yours, Money Insights, and other companies that even work in the alternative space. I mean, these are great things to add on, or that may be their primary means of going from high income to high net worth. Because this is the way I look at it. If you've been doing the same thing over and over and over again, and you've made all this money, and you can look back, you know, 10 years, 15 years into your career, and you've been making this high income, and it's still not adding up, and you still find yourself not satisfied with that overall net worth, I mean, something has to change. It's not going to change for you. You have to change.
Amen. Yes, I'm totally with you. Well, one of the things that we did, and I'm super excited about it, my partner and I created what we're calling the F3 assessment, and you can check it out at f3assessment.com. But basically, it's an assessment that allows anybody really to go in, and it's like simple enough that it doesn't take forever to do, but it's long enough that I can get real value out of it. The idea was to help people get an idea of not just where they're at from a statistical, like, money standpoint, but also from a behavioral standpoint, from a mental standpoint. Where am I at along that roadmap to true wealth? And so it's a cool concept that we're really excited about it. Check it out at f3assessment.com. And yeah, tell us what you think. I think it's an interesting one.
Awesome. Well, Christian, you know, I can talk to you about this all day long, but we're about out of time for this episode. So that being said, if somebody's listening to this and they want to learn more about what you're doing over at Money Insights, or to connect with you and your team, I mean, what's the best way for them to do that?
For sure. Again, f3assessment.com, I think, is the best way to get connected with us. You can, of course, go check us out at moneyinsights.net. That's a .net, not a .com. I think this is funny, Evan, because every once in a while I'll be like typing my own email address in and then I'll type a .com, but just for clarity, it's moneyinsights.net. So they can check us out at either one of those things. And like you said, like, all we want to do is provide educational tools that can create opportunities for people to go to the next level. Not everybody is necessarily right for our firm, but we hope that the material that we're putting out can be valuable so that if you don't fit into that accredited category or that high income category, that will help provide some of the tools to get there so you can ultimately move from high income to high net worth.
Awesome. Well, Christian, really appreciate you coming on the show today and sharing more about your background and all the great stuff that you're up to helping your clients. And to the audience, as always, thank you for tuning in. Hope you got a lot of value out of this. If you did, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, leave me a review in the Apple iTunes Store, and if you're watching this on our YouTube channel, Mission Matters Money, definitely give us a subscribe there, but also leave us some comments in the video. Love to know what kind of projects and things they're working on. And Christian, thanks again for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. It was awesome.